Hey there. Welcome to the Tenfold AI podcast. I'm Heather. This is Matt, and we're the founders of Promode.ai, which is also the sponsor of this podcast, where we talk about AI for business, for B2B business in particular. This is for the business owner who is like, what the hell am I supposed to do with AI? I know it's cool. I know I need to get on the AI train, but where's the station? And we're here to point the way and also point out some maybe landmines to avoid, that all infamous shiny object syndrome that can cost you time and money and be a real pain in the ass. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we talk about here. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
I'm good. Feeling great.
Good. You sent me a little hit list that you wanted to talk about today, and I was stoked. You always have fun ideas, but this one in particular I was intrigued. I was like, yeah, I wonder where he wants to go with that one.
Well, okay. I think we should start off easy with some pop culture. I was looking at what I was getting ready to show you from this machine learning experiment I've been doing on your LinkedIn.
I can't wait.
That's a little bit on the nerdy side. How do you feel about easing folks in with some pop culture?
That's fine.
Okay. All right. I realize sometimes I get going on a little bit of a tear sometimes. All right.
It's okay.
So
you're going to show us something? Okay.
Yeah, an ethical question related to AI.
Let's see. Netflix in trouble after using AI to clone murder victim Gabby Petito's voice. Okay. And this is on gizmodo.com.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you watch this docu-series, by the way?
No, I did not.
It was good. Man, honestly, we were talking about makeup beforehand. I think I might be slowly just coming off of like 2 weeks of having pneumonia.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I watched every murder documentary there was. I am so basic now. But anyway, this is one that I watched. I saw this today. I mean, again, I don't know how much of this is like manufactured outrage from people or not, or, obviously anything related to AI is going to be getting clicks today. So let's just like all the normal caveats. But so I was looking at this and I always kind of think to myself, all right, well, what is like the counterfactual to these things? And then I started to look at, well, where are all of the instances where a human voiceover actor has imitated a deceased person's voice, or even a stunt double, imitating their likeness in the case of Fast and Furious. What's that guy's name?
Yeah.
Walker.
Right. But I mean, they're privy to that. Mm-hmm. Like the actor knows that this guy's going to pretend to be me. Anyway, just playing devil's advocate.
Well, and the only reason I brought Fast and Furious is because there was a stunt double that played Paul Walker after he was deceased.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. And there was another instance where, and this is before like there was a big CGI fear, but if you recall I can't remember which Star Wars it was, but they used CGI to recreate Carrie Fisher. It was a beautiful scene.
That's right. Yeah.
Very cool. And by and large, when it was called CGI, CGI tools, they use artificial intelligence to map these characters. There definitely wasn't an outrage. It was almost an homage to Carrie Fisher when they did this.
Sure.
But I'm kind of curious, like what this is an interesting ethical dilemma. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
It is an ethical dilemma. And I think that, this is a really good example of why we have to remember that we have to keep our humanity, right? And in the age of AI, we can't just throw all the rules of etiquette and social grace to the wayside and say, oh, just because we can, we should. No, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And in this case, perhaps a conversation with the family about this plan would have been in order. Like, hey, for the production of this, we are exploring creating an AI voice of your daughter, your sister, your cousin, whatever. Do we have your blessing to do that? Right? Like, that's just very basic, like, humanity kind of stuff. And not just because, you shouldn't just because you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
would
think that could have been solved, but, like Scarlett Johansson, did she actually sue OpenAI for her likeness and her voice and cloning that? People are going to have some feelings. And I realize we're talking about a murder victim, which is tragic. But in our world, in marketing, there's things like copyright. And I think copyright attorneys are scratching their heads right now. Patent attorneys, like, how the hell do we ensure ownership of AI output that companies have? And it's something that we've thought about too. It's like, who owns it? And there's not a lot of case law that exists for this topic yet. It can be difficult to prove source when you're talking about AI outputs, whether it's voice or video or copy. So the world of, like, who has the right to your likeness, to your voice, to your words, when everything we're saying on social media is being housed in an LLM somewhere, what is ownership anymore? And I think that's kind of the big question.
You know what? I have this like weird dream slash, I don't know what it is, but I would love to watch a court case, a copyright court case related to training data. Because to me, this is super fascinating because there's when an LLM is trained on a corpus of data, it doesn't do a good job of maintaining a historic record of that data. You know what I mean? This would be the equivalent of like a broad, okay, if a person has a broad liberal arts education and they understand the high points in history, let's say world history. Okay, I understand generally the Roman Empire, these things, et cetera, et cetera. And then you listen to a historian, somebody who's got a PhD in history. They are citing years, cities, dates, key figures in this, So, the LLMs, I think it's probably safe to say that an LLM operates like a person who has received a well-rounded liberal arts education. So in this hypothetical court case in my mind, I would love to hear an AI company who did training on a corpus of data make the argument that it is no different. It is like a derivative work, because the LLM was trained in the same way that humans are trained and learned, in the way that like music, like I play music, right? Everything that I play is some derivative of something I've heard in the past. I mean, there's only so many ways you can put chords together and beats. I mean, these are finite factors that are all influenced by previous things.
Right.
I would love to see like OpenAI bring a neurologist to the stand to try to make the point that well, if this is copyright infringement, we're actually not reproducing the work. We are training on a corpus of data. Well, then every musical artist ever should be brought up for copyright infringement because
that
models are trained so similarly.
That makes so much sense, especially as we build on my knowledge in the School of Math that I'm enrolled in. It's like you said before, LLMs function more like a human brain, and I think they function more like a human brain than a library, right? Like a library is like, you can find the book, the page, cite the source, the information may be the same as what's in someone's brain, unless you have total recall to know here's the exactly where I heard this or saw this. Like we all regurgitate things from our echo chambers and whatever that we're immersed in all the time. So yeah, it brings up the question, like how can you treat an LLM any different than, a human in that regard? Like I train my children. I
Right.
expose them to different things and teach them things. That training data is the world around us and we don't own it, but they own their knowledge of it.
Yes. Yep.
So yeah, it's a very interesting, and I know these things are being talked about in some pretty sophisticated think tanks around the world right now, and seeing where it will all land will be fascinating. But for now, it's very much the Wild West. Like everyone's trying to figure out what the rules are. And like you've mentioned, for video generation, a lot of the training data was pornography.
Yeah.
And it's like, who would have guessed that would happen? But then I hear about companies like Tesla and Amazon with their Ring doorbells. They're gathering tons of training data because they have cameras and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And because of this mass body of data that they're building, they'll be able to do generated videos and images based on that training data.
Absolutely. I think the Ring, you bring up a great point with the Ring doorbell. I mean, to me, that to me seems like it will be the path to AI having a better grasp of physics. I don't think it ever will. I mean, you kind of need, like right now, my inner ear is so messed up, but so I'm like keenly aware of the requirement of like carbon-based biology for understanding physics. So I don't think that it will be fully intuitive as far as physics is concerned in the way that it is with language. But yeah, it's interesting because a Ring doorbell is a fixed point and you can know the approximate height of that doorbell. And then you have all kinds of characters walking by, coming closer, moving further away, turning around. That
Yeah.
to me would be very interesting because if you think about it, you're trying to do AI generated video, which also has to take into account this thing is taken with a camera that is at a fixed point and things need to move around that fixed point. That's
Mhm.
interesting. I never thought about it. That's cool. All right. Hypothetical. I know you love would you rathers, but circling back to Netflix using AI to clone this voice. So Black Mirror is one of my favorite shows ever. And
Wow, it's great.
so I'm curious, you and I will probably see in our lifetime, this is a Black Mirror theme, we'll probably see the ability for us to aggregate all of our social media presence, these podcasts, all of these things. We'll probably see a time when we can create a reasonable facsimile of ourselves. And the use case that Black Mirror always brings up is after you are deceased, somebody then creates this digital facsimile of you.
Mm.
Would you do that?
I mean, I could see why everyone else would want it so that they could still be around me. Yeah, I get it. But I don't think I would have no desire to do that because my consciousness wouldn't be in that facsimile. So it's like, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
To me, it would be very hard to sit with the reality that like nothing new could be introduced into that system through biology. To me, that would be like, that's unsettling to me because
yeah.
the, let's say that like I die and, there's this AI me, like theoretically it could receive new input, grow and learn new things. And
Huh.
like it could morph. It wouldn't be a fixed version of me. It would change with conversations, but it feels weird to me that the new inputs going into my like postmortem AI would all be just like to me like really simple and dumb and crude data because it's not going through my biology. It's not like nothing's passing through my inner ear or like the pads of my feet or something like that. It just seems like I would progressively get dumber
Yeah.
because I'd have such like low resolution inputs
Well,
as
you would only have the realizations that don't come from human hardship.
Mhm.
And what are we without our realizations that come from human hardship?
Yeah.
Like the empathy and the changing your mind. Like I was just telling my kids the other day where they were asking me about theology because my kids are in an interesting and I think kind of cool position where they're Jewish on one side of their family. They're more Christian on the other side and kind of agnostic in there as well. So they have a lot of questions about religion and theology. And I told one of them the other day that, you're going to change your mind about some things in your life. And for me, it's those moments that you change your mind about something that you feel the most alive. Like new revelation that causes humility and growth and empathy towards others, like those moments of where you drastically change your position about something, whether it's God or aliens or, like the afterlife or any kind of these big existential conversations, you have a change of position. That's where the most interesting growth comes from. And you hear about that in the great minds of history. They were on a certain course and then something drastic happened in their life. Their family died or they got really sick or, some pivotal thing happened and then the rest of their life was very different. And AI can't really experience that sort of evolution.
You bring up such an man, you bring up a great point. So there's so much talk about AGI, right? So all of the, obviously all of the major LLM providers for them, AGI is like the benchmark that they're trying to reach. We're the first one that got AGI. I oftentimes wonder if a part of intelligence is discomfort, pain, like a rock in your shoe. Is that a
Yeah.
critical part of decision making that, I mean, I agree, like as humans, it seems that is the part of it. It is like we need a rock in our shoe to change our mind, to take action, to like propel us to make change.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that like, I wonder if cracking the code of AGI is like doing post training on these models and being like, you're a stupid piece of shit. You're never going to amount to anything.
Traumatize them a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, your mom and I are embarrassed that you are
Yeah.
a kid.
Your parents are getting a divorce.
Yeah, exactly. I ask myself that a lot, and and then what kind of like sadistic people would you hire to
Yeah.
that love for discomfort on these AI models?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if that would work. I mean, that's very interesting. No, I don't know. I just don't think for me there wouldn't be a value in doing a facsimile of myself. I mean, maybe some once in a lifetime mind, some super genius who's, you know, we need to preserve them for some reason, but even then, I don't know.
I would do like a really crude version of me that like just does one thing that I do, like whatever that is,
But Matt,
almost like a parlor trick.
maybe that's what autobiographies will be in 20 years. Like your autobiography is an experience
Mm. Mm.
and you can interact with it. You can ask it questions and have a dialogue, but it's for the purpose of the reader or the consumer of that experience.
That is really cool. And then, so like bringing full circle the Netflix example we were talking about, like that is a phenomenal use case. How fucked up for the family though.
Right.
That is where it gets like, okay, no family can use this.
Yeah. Yeah. And, as far as legislation goes, perhaps there will be some new line item in the final will and testament just like you can donate your organs for science or for donation, you can, do you want your AI, do you want your rendering of any part of yourself, your words, your thoughts, your whatever personality, do you want those to live on after you? And you can check a box.
On the back of your driver's license. My gosh.
Make me a robot. Check yes or no.
These discussions are too fun. Okay, let's move on. We kind of talked about AGI a little bit. So I think this is kind of very interesting to me. I had some time to play around with GPT Mini. And so I had not done, since they released it, I've not done a deep dive into it, but I had some projects I was working on, a little bit like BTS as far as promo is concerned. We're starting to get to the point where we're having clients that are amassing large enough data sets from when they first came on with Pro Mode that we'll be able to apply some really serious machine learning, just like real-time machine learning to it. We just, when client first starts, we really don't have enough data to be working with, but now we are like beginning to amass these huge data sets. So anyway, I was, wanting to do some research and experimentation on some different models, machine learning models that might be good for us in this use application. So, things that we're trying to do is we're trying to maximize for content approval from the client. We're trying to minimize content rejection. And then we're trying to do, just a basic like semantic rendering of text that is coming from this business. And so I was like, okay, cool. Let's like start getting my hands dirty at like a general concept of how we're going to do this thing. Let's actually like get down to the nitty gritty and start choosing what libraries, what models, what like the whole setup of it all, right? Has a long ass backstory. Sorry. And so I, because O3 Mini had like such good scores on coding, I was like, okay, this is perfect. I will play around with O3 Mini and I will like learn, just get better at Python, which is not my strong suit by any means, but it's like, this will be fun. We'll kill two birds with one stone. And so I was using O3 Mini to help me out with some Python. And the thing that I found interesting, so I've done this for
Python is a coding language.
Correct. Yeah. And it's what you would use to run different machine learning models, data cleanup, things like that. Mm-hmm. So I'd done the same thing many months ago, like when one came out. I've used Claude for the same purpose, and all of those do really well. But the most fascinating thing for me with the O3 Mini is I found that it got such a keen idea of my Python skills so early on in the chat. And it was like, okay, this guy is very green. So so you would see the reasoning, so like they show like a summary of the reasoning that the model is going through. And I would watch it and it would be like, the user is unfamiliar with this Python library. I should first only tell him about this one. I mean, really just like that you would teach a kid Python. Yeah. It like had such an intuition of my skill level and vernacular as it relates to Python that it would give me these tiny, like, okay, run this function now. And then, okay, then I would run the function. If I would get an error or whatever the case may be. But it was unlike any of these other models I've ever used. It had a really keen intuition of my current understanding, and the steps that it gave me were so small. Do this one or two things. Here's like one other option of a function you might want to run. And it was so sequential. It was like an expert teacher was like, you know what I mean? Somebody that is like a black belt at whatever they do, have the ability to assess exactly where you are in that thing and be like, start with this. that blew my mind. I mean, that was like obviously a UX decision on the part of OpenAI to like, it was almost dumber output. If I could summarize it in any way, it was like, this is a rudimentary output that if somebody's a Python developer, they would look at my chat and be like, both of you are idiots. Like, what is you doing here?
Yeah, but it knew how to stay like one or two steps ahead of you to lead you down the path of learning in a better way than just dumping a textbook on you.
It was in a way that I've never seen an LLM do. That was like, it was so impressive. Now, like, that's all I've really played around with it. So it's like a very technical, super specific, it's a fixed subject matter that has logical steps, but its ability to translate that to my current understanding was unmatched. I mean, it was truly like, I was flabbergasted by it.
Very cool. I should have it teach me how to do my taxes because I hate that.
Yeah, any more on that? I just jibber jabbered on about
No,
I was.
that's good. I haven't played around with GPT Mini yet. I don't know where it would fit into my day to day, but I mean, I use many other tools, but that's very cool. So you said you did something to my LinkedIn. What did you do?
Yes. Okay. So I needed a huge data set. So I was like, okay, I want to practice. Let me see what type of results I get out of this thing. And so, I did probably some questionable scraping. So that's why I chose your LinkedIn, just in case. I don't know what,
I go to LinkedIn jail.
I don't know if like, Microsoft would have reached out to me and I'd be like, yeah, let's just get on here's Heather's number. You can text her. She's okay with it. I don't know why I thought for some reason that would be less of a violation of terms of service, but that was my.
The LinkedIn bandit is on the loose.
So I scraped your entire LinkedIn activity and I was just like, to me, some things I was interested in. I just want to, okay, let's learn how to handle a massive data set. Let's figure out what machine learning functions are additive to this learning and what aren't. Because the more we can like strip it down to like, here's what we need for promote was kind of the experiment that I was running. And then as I was doing that, I was like, okay, what all could I learn from Heather's LinkedIn? And the thing that I found to be very interesting was there's a lot of these algorithm myths, and this is what I want you to speak to before I get into showing you all this nonsense. There's a lot of algorithm myths that are out there where it's like, if your post does this, it doesn't get good engagement. If it does this, it gets good engagement. It needs to be at this time on this day and da 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 da. And we hear all of these things.
Very hard to find concrete answers to those questions.
Exactly. The cool thing is that like, we now have access to these open source libraries that can definitively answer these things for us. You know what I found in going through yours? There is not a single correlation between anything. Like, I was like, okay, if there's a link in her post, does that get less engagement? No. If it is like, another thing you would hear is like rage bait, or I don't know if that's the right word, clickbait, or like, if you post something that would be considered negative, right? Zach.
Live, yeah.
Yep. I ran that with yours. I'm looking at it right now. And you're like, your sentiment scores ranged from like, so if we're saying on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being super positive, puppies and rainbows, what would I say? Like, no, 1 is like super negative, you hate America or whatever.
Turn it down.
Yeah. And then 10 is puppies and rainbows. Your highest engagement post was a range of probably like 3 on the negative end of things to like a 7 on the positive end of things. Equal distribution, positive and negative. No correlation between if there was an image or a video on it. 0 correlation on the time of day that something was posted. Like, literally no, like even I looked at before, okay, I'm jumping ahead. I want to hear from you. Talk to me from somebody who's been in marketing and like you've probably heard and said a lot of these like algorithmic, quote unquote, best practices.
Yeah.
Like, what is your impression of that?
It's interesting. There's a lot of hearsay. Like there's not a lot of like, here is the definitive source that we all go to find the answer to this. Like in the field of accounting, they have tax codes to go back to, and that's the source of truth. There really isn't that in the world of digital marketing. There's whatever Google's latest release is. Nobody knows what's next or what they're testing that they're not telling anyone about. And when it comes to social platforms, there's even less information about how to rank, how to be seen more in LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is historically the word on the street in the marketing community is LinkedIn is a very like tight algorithm. It's a very selective and difficult to hack algorithm. And we've been told it's because of things like the user interface. You can't see as many posts in one go. So if your average time is 3 minutes or 5 minutes on the platform, you're going to see fewer posts in that 3 to 5 minutes compared to the same 3 to 5 minutes in Facebook or Twitter for sure, right? Where you see so many more. So we've been told things like time of day posting matters. You want to do lunchtime, or depending on your industry, you want to find the time that people are likely to be engaging. Length of post, we've been told some things about that. Posting in LinkedIn with a link, I have been told just recently by a LinkedIn, kind of guru, that posting a link will have a negative effect on the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn wants people to stay on the platform and not click on links and navigate away, which does make sense logically. And perhaps that's how they backed into that assumption rather than from data. But if you're telling me you're looking at my LinkedIn, which I have been quite active for years and years, I have a lot going on LinkedIn, and I am still frustrated by LinkedIn all the time because I post things and I'm like, nobody saw it or 7 people saw it, and it's frustrating. So is there any insights because the only thing that's coming to my mind as you're talking, because I'm checking the boxes of all the variables and you're saying, nope, that one doesn't matter, that one doesn't matter, that one doesn't matter. The one that's standing out to me would be frequency.
Boom. Yes. This was actually just a long-winded sales pitch for promo. Is that you have no idea. Like we have no idea.
Right. If you can't hack it, right. Say that nicely, right? If you can't have success in these social platforms by following these little tricks, like make it this long, don't put a link, do put a link, put a video, don't put a video, this time of day. Like if you can't hack it in your 2 posts a week in that by checking those hack boxes, then the one that seems to be of course, valuable content. Yes, don't post trash, but also frequency. Post more often all the time,
Yes.
which is 101 advertising.
Right. Right. It's fascinating. Right now, this is my only hypothesis so far. And just to be clear, this is not a test that I've run yet. I need to expand my data set a little bit to test this. But the initial thing I wanted to know, is there anything related to what Heather is doing that optimizes for engagement? Is there any action that she's taking? And the answer is no. The answer is definitively nothing you're doing is changing the likelihood of engagement with that. So that would lead me to believe that the next set of features that I need to analyze are what other people are doing to what you're doing. Because again, if you, you had all these crazy outliers where, somebody would think, well, if Heather created original content, that would have a higher engagement potential. It was proven false by reshared content that had high engagement from you. And it wasn't the case that if you reshared somebody's post, that yielded higher engagement. It was like absolutely nothing that you would do would change that whatsoever. So now I'm wondering if, and the number of comments that a post gets, the total number of comments has no bearing on the long-term total reach. I'm wondering if who comments is the greatest bearing on performance. If you get a comment from the right person, that to me, like that's probably where I'm going to dig into is like, just for this experiment, right? Like that's outside of our control. But I mean, again, bringing it back to promo, it is these factors, these algorithmic factors, at least for LinkedIn, from what I've looked at, whatever is in the control of the user, the one creating the content, there's like really zero correlation between.
Interesting. I do know that in the last year, I think I've probably posted more than in any other year.
Mm-hmm.
So that might help with some frequency testing.
Yes. Where are those?
Like, did engagement go up in the last year when my posting frequency went up? Which seems like it would be a no-brainer, but yeah, interesting to see what the data says.
So let's look at some of these. I mean, this is like fun for me. And so now I'm really going to put myself on blast. Everybody's going to see my shitty Python and all the errors. Piss off if you think that. So right now we're looking at text to mix. So basically what I do is I took all your LinkedIn posts and I just turned it all into numbers. There's a bunch of different machine learning models that you can use to turn this stuff into numbers. I think I did like 4 or 5 different embedding models for your text. And so you see here, this PC and this PC2, these are just like representative of the content or the sentiment of what you posted. And so the fact that these dots are so scattered out and nothing seems to be clustered anywhere is sort of an indication of randomness, right? Like there's no clustering of anything related to the content and the level of engagement. So like 5,000. So I just created an arbitrary score for engagement of 0 to 5,000. And so that was like a combination of people who reshared your stuff, people who commented on it, people who liked it. Here, no correlation between engagement and sentiment or topics. So then what I did is I couldn't find any correlations related to topics. So I was able to distill down all of your posts into like 10 broad topics. So no correlation across those 10 topics. Then I created 50 more embeddings that would highlight like tone of voice and topics. Again, no correlation there. No correlation between the hour that it was posted or the day of the week. What are some other interesting? You might find this to be very fascinating. So this is sentiment. This is the positivity, like quote unquote, like positive sentiment, negative sentiment of high engagement posts. So in this case, granted, this is not a statistically significant number by any means. I just found it to be interesting that for you in your high engagement clusters tended to be about like 15% more negative than your low engagement posts. So that to me seemed interesting. So we've got topic distribution. So there's like one topic. So like 2 out of 10 topics that I analyzed had higher engagement than other topics. I don't know what those topics are. They're just represented by numbers. But so again, it's like the thing that you're talking about has no bearing on engagement. is like the main takeaway here. What other interesting things did we find? I mean, this is like just for a total nerd thing right here, but I did get better luck by creating embeddings out of your text as opposed to breaking them down into topics. So that would be like something that we would actually use for pro mode is, right now we tend to be very topic focused. This to me says that we might have better success just using pure numerical embeddings for how we speak, What other interesting, look at all these terrible errors. Nobody look, nobody look, nobody look. Oh, and then this got really fun. So then I was like, okay, there's no correlations here. I want to build a model that talks like Heather. So after she dies, somebody to podcast with. So this was very fun. So all these like abbreviations up here represent how you talk. So I created like 45 different numerical representations of how you post on LinkedIn. Yeah. And yeah, like this is just so interesting. So negative sentiment score would mean that you are like speaking negatively, anything above 1 or anything above 0 would be considered a positive sentiment score. So again, no real correlation between those. And then this is just me building a writing profile for you, which this is what I'm smack dab in the middle of. I need to do some further research on this. This is the only thing that really came out of this where I was like, there's a pattern in here. You have this interesting cluster of writing style over here. Like it's a huge outlier and there are a shitload of examples over here. So this is the thing that I'm going to dig into next is like, what is the defining feature of this cluster of writing here? Because to me, as I'm looking like anything above this 25, like this 25 to 40 point right here tells me that Heather lives in here somewhere. And I'm going to find her, resurrect her. Yeah. That's all I got to say about that.
That is wild. I don't even know how to interpret that. But yeah, I mean, I think frequency is the key.
It 100% is the key. Anything that gets engagement, anything that goes viral and it will be unintentional when it happens. So what's in your control? Consistency. Like that is the only factor in your control from what I see here. Again, this is a sample size of 1. It is you. You, though, are a super user. I mean, I would say that you are very representative of ProMode's clients I think you're representative of people that use LinkedIn and use LinkedIn to grow their business. So I think although it's a sample size of 1, it is a strong sample in my opinion.
Yeah. That is fascinating. And it makes sense. And yes, it does. Like when we were creating ProMode, I think the biggest revelation for me in doing research was, holy shit, these companies that I've been working with for years, these mid-market B2B companies that previously I worked with at an agency, they need to be putting out so much more content than they are. And it's almost like my brain wouldn't even allow me to think that until AI.
Mm-hmm.
Because it would have been a moot point. It would have been, yeah, sure, it'd be nice to make more content and publish more stuff for our clients, but they are a $10 million company that's dedicating 85% of their sales and marketing budget to their sales team, and that's what they really should be doing. They do not have the budget to spend 40 grand a month on a massive content strategy.
Yeah.
And so that was the ceiling for forever until AI came along and said, oh, well, actually you can turn up the volume 10x, produce way more content for less money, and it's still good, and you're still going to see results like this.
Absolutely. I mean, this really does. I mean, okay, tangible takeaways. I think that to me, this shows me that the people that are like, oh, if you use AI generated content on LinkedIn, it's not going to get high. I mean, this is like proof positive that you're full of shit. Well, what was the other thing that I was going to say? Oh, yeah. And another thing, as I was looking through this, so I told you I created an engagement score, and that engagement score was from a 0 to 5,000. And there were these very clear benchmarks in that score where the engagement score was like, it was either 4 or it was 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and 5,000. So the vast majority of things were a score of a 4 on a 0 to 5,000. And then you saw these bumps that were like very clear. I mean, it was like almost, it went from 4 to exactly 2,000, 4 to exactly 3,000, which to me, again, I don't know what LinkedIn's algorithm is or how it's formulated, but I do know that it's primarily optimizing for time on the platform. So that means that if in any random moment where there is either a need for this, there's like in that particular day, there's a desire for this type of content where this type of post today or during this hour is seeming to keep people on the platform just a little bit longer than the average LinkedIn user, that then gets fed. And when I'm looking at this, it's clear to me that it is fed in tiers. And so there's a tier that you break through where every other LinkedIn user on that day seems to be looking for and reading the thing that you also put out on that day. If those things line up, they release it to tier 1. If it still is going the next day, it's released to tier 2 and tier 3. But again, these things, before it hits your trending topics in LinkedIn, your trending topics on LinkedIn are generated after that algorithm has run. Like those trending topics are not telling you what to post about that day. Those trending topics are on the tail end of that algorithm releasing specific content across those tiers.
Interesting.
So
that makes sense.
It truly is like, talk about what your company does, talk about it consistently, like never miss a beat. And then there will be times like, and in looking at this data for you, it seemed to happen like 4 times a year is about how it happened for you. So then 4 times a year, there is the rest of LinkedIn syncs up with your lunar cycle and that's it released.
Every time Mercury is in retrograde, I do awesome on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, just to zoom out for a second, and I know we need to wrap up here in just a minute, but I was thinking this morning, kind of aside from LinkedIn, aside from even marketing or promo, just AI in general, I was thinking about this age-old kind of like battle within every company that wants to grow, which is the battle between innovation and efficiency. Like efficiency is innovation's biggest enemy and vice versa. And we see that represented in, the CFO and the operations side want efficiency and they're pushing for that. The CEO, the CMO, the VP of sales want innovation. And it's like the gas pedal and the brake constantly pressing against each other. And I thought about it like AI really is at the intersection of innovation and efficiency. And that's, I think, like to sum up all of our podcasts, like that's the exciting thing. Like that's why we're stoked enough about AI to talk about it on a podcast every week. And of course, to build, promote, and launch it to the masses for the purpose of marketing. But in general, like if you're a business owner, think of AI like that. It's sitting on that intersection of innovation and efficiency, meaning you can innovate quickly, you can learn quickly, and maintain efficiency along the way. That's why people are so excited about AI.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. That's absolutely it. It is. The iteration period is next to nothing. I mean, like if your testing time period, you can deploy things tomorrow, and all of that innovation can be done in real time, out hiring people without, I mean, like it is like the era of testing and innovation is here. And, and the AI tools that work that, they allow you to do that. I mean, you nailed it, Heather.
It's very cool. Well, this has been the Tenfold AI podcast. I'm Heather. This is Matt. This podcast is sponsored by Promode.ai. Promode is the first ever AI-powered marketing platform specifically built for B2B companies to help you save money, do a lot more marketing in less time. So if you want to check it out, I would love to show you a demo. You can reach me at heather@promode.ai, and we will see you next time.
Adios.
Thank you.